Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. I know it's been a few days since I've uploaded a video. It's taken me a little while to get this one edited and ready to go. We're going to go ahead and jump right into it. We are going to start off with these 3 wreath rings from Dollar Tree. This is some Ollie Fun fabric that I picked up from Walmart, and now I hauled this a couple months back and I got it when it was on sale. I'm not sure how much it is right now, but it was never more than like, I think $2 or $3 at regular price. So that is where it came from, but you could buy any black fabric that you wanted to. You could even go to Dollar Tree and pick up like a black tablecloth to use for this. Also, the only thing I would be careful of if you use the tablecloth is how hot your glue is, because if it is a vinyl or plastic tablecloth, you might end up melting it, so you may want to like super glue that. So what I'm going to do is start with the smallest ring out of those 3. I'm going to lay it on top of my fabric here, and I'm just going to try to cut a square that's going to give me about an inch, a little bit more than an inch on either side of that ring. And all I'm doing by cutting this is just getting a smaller piece to work with instead of trying to have this whole roll of fabric unrolling on me the whole time. So whenever you get this fabric, it comes folded in half and then rolled up on that roll. So now I'm just going to unfold it so that I only have one layer of the material. Now I'm going to trace around this little hoop, and I'm going to give myself about a half of an inch around the outside of that loop. And what I'm doing is giving myself enough fabric that I can fold over the edge of it and then glue it to itself. And it's okay if your circle is not perfect. And I just used a piece of chalk to trace that out. If you didn't have a piece of chalk, you could either mark it out with pins or just leave your hoop laid on it, or maybe tape it down on there and then cut around it. And there I'm just cutting off my little messed up strip of the fabric, that way it's squared off. So what I'm doing now is I'm going to cut notches. And I'm only going in about 1/4 of an inch into the material, and I'm making little squares around the outside of this ring of material, and they're about a half an inch wide or so. And the reason I'm doing that is whenever you have fabric like this that you're trying to fold round, if it is one solid piece, you're going to get wrinkles in it whenever you fold it in. If you cut these little notches, whenever you have a piece that is sticking out too far, you can lay these notches over top of each other, and it helps to cinch in the material so that it lays nice and flat up against that ring and nice and round. So I'm running a thin line of glue right inside of that hoop on the material itself, and then I'm going to fold those notches over. And then whenever I lay them down, I will lay a notch and then put the next notch overlapping that one on the edge or on the corner of it. So here I've laid them down. I'm just going to finish going the rest of the way around the hoop. Now I did mess up whenever I started this, and I had my hot glue gun on high heat, and it was a little bit too hot and it ran through to the other side of the material, so I turned it down to low heat. So if you're going to use the Ollie Fun fabric, use low heat, but you can see there I have some spots of glue that ran through when I first started. That's fine because we're going to cover them up later. But if you wanted your hat to just be plain black, go with low heat on your glue gun, or possibly even some fabric glue instead. So now I'm just taking a little tape measure. I'm deciding how big I want the top of the hat to be, and we are going to make a little witch hat out of this. So it is going to be a cone shape. That's why I measured the circle. And then we are going to take this strip of fabric that I've cut now, and this is just the front of a drawing pad that my daughter had from Dollar Tree. I pulled the front off, and I'm just using this to trace from the outer corner up to the center of this material to make a triangle shape. That way we can make our cone for our witch hat. So you're just going to go ahead and trim those off. Right here, I'm just making sure that my sides match up like they are supposed to. I had a little extra on the edge on one side, so now I'm just going to run a little line of hot glue right along the edge. And then we are going to press those seams together. And we are going to flip this right side out once that glue has dried, and make sure you use either your finger or a pencil, something to go ahead and poke up the point on the top of that cone shape. And once it is rolled in a cone, you'll have this little tail looking thing on it. Just trim that off. So I'm using the front of the cone to measure that, and then you should have a flat bottom. Now I'm going to fold up a little lip on that material about 1/2 inch. And that's going to be where my hot glue is going to go once I put this onto the hat. So here I have some polyfill. This is just to give my hat a little more stabilization so that the cone stands up like it is supposed to. You could also use, like, if you had some shopping bags, like Walmart bags or something, that you just had crammed into a corner somewhere, or you just have too many of them, you can stuff those inside to get rid of them and kind of recycle them. Or anything that you had, some old socks, whatever would work inside of there, just something to help it stand up like it's supposed to. So now I'm trying to make sure that I have it centered. I'm going to run a line of hot glue, and then I'm going to fold down that little lip that we made with that material so that it lays flat, and that is what is going to go into the little hot glue line. That way we can't see a whole bunch of hot glue sticking out. And this Ollie Fun fabric does come in multiple colors, by the way. I know whenever I bought it, I've bought it in pink, blue, green, black. I think it comes in white also, and possibly yellow. So you could make your witch hat a different color if you wanted to. So that's what it looks like when it's finished. You'll see this little spider button I had left over from some other projects. I bought that from Walmart, I think the year before last. Now here you'll see on my hat brim a whole crap ton of glue that's on there. That is because my original idea was to run a cute little Halloween ribbon around the outside. However, I could not get it to lay properly because of the hat being round. So instead, I had this glitter vase filler from Dollar Tree, and I'm just going to glue it around and make it look like some bubbling witch's brew. This is what it looked like once it was finished. I think it turned out really cute. So now we are going to move on to the medium-sized ring, and all I did was go ahead and cover it with that black Ollie Fun fabric, just like we did the small one before it. Only this time, instead of making a witch hat, we are going to make a snowman hat. So I'm measuring my circle, how big I want my hat to be. So you're going to cut out the circle to be the top of the hat, and then you are going to cut a rectangle shape of material. However big around your circle is going to be, that's how long you want that rectangle to be. So if my circle is 20 inches around, which I think this one was, then I cut a 20-inch long piece of rectangle shaped material. So all I did here was put a little bit of glue right on the edge, and I just started with my circle. And then you're going to kind of roll your circle as you go around to keep your edges together. So I just finished doing that, and I just did about maybe 2 inches of it at a time. That way I could keep control over the material and I wouldn't get glue all over the place. Now I do end up going back and changing this, and I will go ahead and tell you right now, if you're going to make this, to make the top of your hat stay flat like it is supposed to be, cut a piece of cardboard the size of the circle that you need and glue that round piece to it, and then glue your rectangle fabric around that once it is on there. I thought maybe it would be okay with just my material, but you'll see here in a minute, it's kind of poked up on the top. But right now I am finishing putting the little circle on there, and then all I do once my sides meet in the back, one side overlaps the other about 1/4 of an inch, so I'm just running a line of hot glue and then pressing those seams together right there that you just saw. And that's going to give us this kind of cylinder shape that's typical of a top hat. Now I did stuff this one also to help it hold its shape. So there I just trimmed off. I had one side that was slightly longer than the other. So I tried to trim it off, make it even. So now I'm deciding where the center of my hat is going to be. Alright, so this is the hat stuffed. All I did was sit it where I wanted it to be, and then I just tipped it up a little bit to lift it off of that hat, and then put a line of hot glue where it was sitting, and then pressed it back down into the glue. And here you can see the top of that hat being kind of puffed up. It's round instead of being flat and really holding its shape, which is still cute if you wanted it like that, but it wasn't sitting well with me that it was poking up and not holding its shape. So my daughter had the idea to put cardboard in it. So what I did was I ripped off the circle from the top, cut a piece of cardboard here, and then glued it on. If I make another one, which I'm sure I will because I love snowmen for Christmas, that's what I decorate with, so I will make some more top hats like this. I would do this from the beginning. Whenever I first put the top of the hat together, I would just already have my piece of cardboard and then glue that rectangle piece around it. It'll make things much easier than what I have to do here, going back and trying to put it in once my hat is already together. So whenever I ripped that circle off the first time, it ripped a little chunk out of that rectangle piece. So what I did was I just folded that over in towards where the stuffing is. So the top of the hat, I folded maybe 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch worth of fabric so that you couldn't see that little tear. And then I'm just stuffing that circle down inside of there, and I'm gonna leave myself about 1/4 of an inch little lip on the sides of the hat that sticks up farther. You will see that here in just a second. So there is my little lip that's going to be sticking up. And all I did was I had my circle in here where I wanted it to be, and since this was stuffing and it has some give to it, I just pushed down on it a little bit, ran the glue on the outer edge of the hat, and then pressed it to that circle. So that's what it looked like once it was all glued in. You can see it is flat on top like it's supposed to be. So these two ribbons here, the large one came from Michael's last year when their Christmas stuff went on clearance, and then that red and black check came from At Home when they had a clearance. I really wanted the black and white check, but it just wasn't a tall enough ribbon for me. It looked kind of dumb because it was so short. So I decided to put this wider ribbon with the little deer on it, and then I'm going to run my checkered ribbon through the center of that. So I still get the checked look, but it is more size appropriate for how tall the top hat is. And I am just making the seam on the ribbon where the two pieces come together match up with the seam on the hat itself in the back. And those were the only places that I glued this ribbon. I didn't glue it all the way around the hat. I didn't feel like it was necessary. Once it is glued to the hat and then to itself, so long as you have it pulled tight enough that it fits flush against the hat, you don't have to worry about it going anywhere. So then I'm doing the same thing with my red checked ribbon, only I'm trying to center it in the middle of that larger ribbon. And then I'm just going to run it around the same exact way and try to get it even all the way around the hat, and then I'm just going to line up the two ends of it and glue them to each other. And then that ribbon did start to fray on me on the end, so what I did was I just folded over about 1/4 of an inch of it and then glued it down so I didn't have to worry about any little threads coming off of it. So this is what the hat looked like with the ribbon on it. And then to decorate this, I used all little leftover pieces from Dollar Tree floral bushes. So those little holly berries came off of a Christmas Dollar Tree bush, and the leaves, the little twisty fir branch right there came from the twist ties that you can get at Christmas time from Dollar Tree. So very simple, but it looks really, really cute. So now, moving to the largest ring wreath, I want to make sort of like a straw hat or like a sun hat, because I love decorating with scarecrows, and most scarecrows have those really cute little straw gardening hats on with the sunflowers and all the other cute little fall foliage. So I'm using this burlap material that I picked up in my haul from Michael's recently. If you've not seen that video, I will link it in this one. So what I'm going to do is the same as we did with those first two rings. We're going to cover the ring itself first. The only difference is because burlap unravels so easily, once I cut my circle out, I am not going to cut those little notches into the edges because I don't want it to fall apart. I'm just going to leave it solid. And you can use any kind of material that you wanted for this. Again, you don't have to go out and buy really expensive burlap. I got this burlap on clearance. It was 2 yards for $5, which was super cheap. If you find cheap burlap somewhere, that's great, but don't feel pressured to go out and buy that if you don't have it. You also possibly could take like some wide burlap ribbon and maybe cut strips and glue them together. I'm not sure, I've not tried that. So I'm just going to lay my ring in here. The second thing that's going to be different on this one, because burlap has holes in it, I don't want to glue directly onto the fabric itself and have glue run all over to the front of the hat. So I am going to put the glue on the wreath ring itself. And I'm trying not to let it get really globbed up or run off the side. So I'm just using a very thin little line right onto that wreath ring. And I just put one little spot on each of the sides of this loop. That way I didn't get going on one side and end up pulling it too tight and then have my fabric too short on the opposite side from it. And now I'm just working my way around, gluing all of that down. And because you don't have the little flaps on this material, you do want to kind of pull it taut as you glue it down. That way you don't have any big wrinkles and it's not loose once you get your hat finished. And then for the center of this hat, you saw a second ago, I'm using an old ice cream bucket. You could use like a flower pot from Dollar Tree or a party bowl. I mean, anything that you want to use, get creative with it. This is just something that I had on hand. I try to reuse and recycle things whenever I can. So I am just going to cover that ice cream bucket with this same burlap material. So at first my plan was to cut a strip that was as tall as the bucket itself and then cut a circle to put on top of the hat. However, once I had cut the little strip out of it, it was really wonky and uneven. So I decided to forego that idea. And I ended up, my ice cream bucket from the bottom of it to the top was 5 inches tall. I ended up, after I cut that strip and it didn't work, with a 10-inch wide piece of burlap material. And so that is what I ultimately ended up using. Here's my little strip, and you'll see when it comes around, one side of it was just really a lot shorter than the other. So I discarded that, and I'm using the leftover 10-inch fabric piece right here. And what I'm going to do, it doesn't take a whole lot of hot glue, and you don't want to use a whole bunch up the sides of the bucket because, again, the burlap has holes in it and it will squish out. I'm just going to run a line of glue around that bottom lip, or I guess it would have been the original top lip of the bucket, but now it's going to be our bottom. So just run a little line of glue on that and stick the edge of your burlap fabric to it. And if you've not seen those little finger guards that I just put on, those are from Dollar Tree, and they come in a set of 3. I've not seen them at my store in a minute. Whenever I was there before, I did pick up 2 packs of them. But if you find those, they are definitely worth having on hand so you don't get burnt really bad with hot glue. I also have seen some other YouTubers use the silicone face mask applicators to press down their hot glue. So now with this bucket, it is not perfectly square. And what you saw right there, because it gets narrower as it goes towards the top, you need to pull that fabric at an angle to make it tight on that bucket. So your seam will be angled, not perfectly straight on this. Now here I'm trying to play around. I was trying to decide how I wanted to do the top of my hat. Did I want to just pull it up and tie like a bow around it and have it gathered, or did I want it to be folded somehow? And I ultimately decided to run it around the circle and fold it to make it flat. I really wanted it to keep that straw hat shape, not a stocking cap shape. So what we're going to do, I'm going to start folding it in, and I'm just going to pinch and pull that fabric around in this circle shape until it meets back in the middle. And then I'm just folding it over at the top so I don't have any raw edges exposed. And I'm just going to glue that down with a nice liberal amount of glue. You don't want to skimp here because this fabric is kind of thick, especially once it's all folded on itself. So that is what the top of it looks like once I am finished. Now we're going to attach this to the bottom part of our hat. And all I'm doing for that, again, is I'm running a thin layer of glue on the lip of the bucket, finding the center, and then I'm just going to press that down really, really good and let it dry until it is nice and cool. And then I am going to use some ribbon from the Dollar Tree here in plaid from their fall collection. And then the flowers that I added, if you've not seen, came from a Walmart haul, and they were actually in the fabric section, and they had swept up all of the misplaced flower heads that came off bushes and sold them for super cheap. That is where all of these came from. I just made a nice little fall arrangement, and this hat was finished. If you guys enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Let me know in the comments if you try any of these projects, and we will see you next time.